The foreseen arcade. Active.
You know, it's been a while since I made a video themed around retro achievements. For those who don't know, it's essentially a website where you earn achievements on retro games via emulation. Given the achievement sets are made by the community, it's only fitting the topic for today is an event for said developers. DevJam is a quarterly event that has developers create achievement sets for systems that didn't get a proper rollout when they were first added to the website. They work the same way as the rollouts for when a new system is officially added for achievement support. Once the DevJam is done, we see the sets being released for a PlayJam event, where users try to beat or master sets that were part of a DevJam. It's only fitting that the first system for DevJam was the SG-1000, Sega's first entry into the home console market, released in 1983. Released only in Japan, the SG-1000 featured a Z80 8-bit processor and 1KB of RAM. Many of the games supported by the console were ports of Sega's popular arcade games, a strategy that will be used in their later consoles as well. While it faced stiff competition from the Famicom, the SG-1000 laid the foundation for Sega's future success in the console industry, ultimately leading to the development of their more iconic consoles such as the Master System, Mega Drive, and the Dreamcast. For the first DevJam, the SG-1000 saw a total of 59 sets and one single subset. For this video, I will be taking a look at each and every game that got a set as part of the DevJam. I will be going through each game by release date, from the oldest to the newest, and this will include homebrew games and unlicensed games. I will be talking about the games, their sets, and my experience when I gave those games a try. So, without further delay, the Foreseen Arcade presents Retro Achievements DevJam Sets, the Sega SG-1000. Our first game on the DevJam is N-Sub, released on July 15, 1983. N-Sub, which was a launch title, is a simple yet addictive game where you control a red submarine and you shoot down ships on the surface and other underwater subs. The set contains 13 achievements, all of which worth 125 points in total. While we get the progression stuff requiring you to beat 5 rounds, there are some challenges like hunting down critical targets and taking down 10 bonus and mystery vessels in a single session, beating fleets without losing any subs, and score achievements where you have to get scores of 5,000 all the way to 40,000. One achievement even asks you to get a score so high, the counter resets itself back to 0. Being that this was an arcade game, I did find some fun with it, even though I had a hard time trying to move to the next round, as I have no idea how many ships on the surface do I need to take down. Mahjong is another launch title that came out on July 15, 1983. Frankly, I have absolutely no idea what am I supposed to do in this game, as I don't really speak or read in Japanese. I guess it's a bit like Rummy, but it still doesn't help me understand how to even play this. Regardless, the set has 15 achievements and worth 104 points. While you can beat the game by simply winning any hand for the first time, the mastery will require you to reach a score of at least 50,000 and 100,000, winning a hand with any Yakuman, winning a non-Yakuman hand with at least 5 hand, and various achievements related to tiles. Returning to the sea for the SG-1000 launch titles, we have Yamato, which is somewhat similar to N-Sub, but this time around you control a warship on a surface. What you do in Yamato is to shoot down other ships, submarines, and airplanes. One button launches missiles for the sea enemies, while the airplanes can be shot down with bullets by pressing the other button. This is another SG-1000 game with a straightforward set, as you need to clear rounds from 1 to 12 to consider this one beaten. But if you want to truly master it, you will also need to clear rounds 3, 6, and 9 without losing a life, as well as 2 achievements for beating the first round using only the anti-ship shot and anti-air shot respectively. Can you show these bozos how strong the Yamato is for the glory of Japan? One more launch title for the road, we have Star Tracker, and this is the first of many arcade ports that we'll be seeing on this video. Star Tracker is a shoot 'em up with a rather clever gimmick. Instead of lives, you control all 4 ships at once as they follow you in a line. So if one ship is destroyed, that counts as losing a life. Lose all ships and it's game over. To beat this game, you need to clear 8 rounds. Though if you want to prove that you are a true Star Tracker, then try mastering this set, as other challenges include destroying a boss ship to skip the rest of a round, score 10,000, 50,000 and 100,000 points respectively, and clearing the first 3 rounds without losing a single ship. As this set has 13 achievements worth 128 points in total, think you can handle this one? Coming out a month after the system's launch, our next game is Safari Hunting, which was a port of a 1980 arcade game originally known as Tranquilizer Gun. Your aim is to hunt snakes, gorillas, lions, and elephants for points. When you tranquilize an animal, you will need to track it to your truck before it wakes up and gets medieval on your safari bomb. So in order to clear a round, you need to tranquilize all animals at the same time. Furthermore, you will also need to keep an eye out on your truck's fuel gauge, as it serves as a time limit counter. With 12 achievements worth 135 points, you simply need to clear 5 rounds in order to beat this game. If you want to be the envy of other safari hunters, at least on RetroAchievements, try mastering this set, as the challenges include clearing rounds 1 through 5 without losing a life, clearing a round with at least half your fuel remaining, holding 1000 and 2.5k points, tranquilizing and collecting 10 of each animal, as well as the selective poaching achievement, where you need to tranquilize and collect 10 elephants without knocking down other species and losing a life. Although the game's RetroAchievements page claims it came out as part of the SG-1000 launch in July, the chronological guide to RetroAchievements says it came out in August of 1983. Regardless of which one is accurate or not, Champion Tennis is the first in SEGA's Champion Sports series. And boy, it is a terrible tennis game. No matter what I did, my ball always hit the net, giving the opponent the score. Your character moved too slow when trying to reach the ball too. Seriously, real sports tennis, which doesn't even have a set, was far better than this, and it was on the Atari 2600, which was a weaker console than the SG-1000. Hell, even Activision's own tennis on the 2600, as basic as it is, was still better than this. Anyhow, the game has 6 achievements worth 27 points. You simply need to win 6 games and complete the match to beat this game. Though the set also has achievements for winning a deuce and for rallying 50 times in a row. Released in October of 1983, Champion Baseball is the next in Sega's Champion Sports series. Unlike Champion Tennis, which was developed for the SG-1000 in mind, Champion Baseball was actually a port of an existing arcade game. While Sega usually developed the Champion Sports games in-house, Champion Baseball was also developed by ADK, the company who will go on to develop several Neo Geo arcade games like Twinkle Star Sprites, World Heroes, Magician Lord, and Aggressors of Dark Combat. This set has 7 achievements worth 68 points, with the only achievement needed to beat this one is to win a game by at least 1 point. Other achievos to unlock for mastery include striking out an opposing batter without them getting a hit, getting a grand slam, scoring 5 or more points in a single inning, making through an inning without letting the other team score, getting a strike with a curveball, and winning a game by at least 1 point and having scored 15 points or more. Looking at the game's Retro Achievement page's comment section, I've read that this game had 2 really odd flaws. For one, the AI pitcher seems to throw too many curveballs way out of a strike zone. The second problem is the fielding is semi-automatic, meaning that all you need to do is throw the ball to the desired baseman to cut down the runner. One user even commented that the blue pitcher has just slightly better aim than Mr. Magoo, as most of the time he hits your teammates with a ball. Perhaps the most amusing bit about this game is the retro review from a website called SEGA Does, which gave this game an F rating. The writer of the review, Dylan Cornelius, referred to this game as another Sega's reckless use of the word champion, with the summary reading as follows. Miraculously, in the one game I played, the one I forced myself to play, I managed to score 5 runs. 4 runs were achieved when I had all the bases loaded, an event which never occurred again, and the guy up the bat hit a home run. The 5th run was achieved through another home run on a different inning. But even with these unexpected occurrences, I couldn't wait to turn the game off. Because the outfielders will catch 90% of all hits, I knew more or less how every inning will play out, which made Champion Baseball uninteresting. What's the point of playing a sports game if the challenge stems not from your opponent, but from the structure of the game itself? Switching things up, we have a rather interesting one. For a bit of context, Sega released their only entry in the home computer market with the SC-3000, which came out alongside the SG-1000 in July of 1983. The intent was to produce a worldwide standard of computers with their hardware kinda like the MSX. While the SC-3000 did have a share of its own exclusives and was compatible with the SG-1000 games, the SC-3000 wasn't made to be a game machine in mind. Like the SG-1000, its distribution was limited to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and select European countries. Not many clones of the SC-3000 were made, given the lack of sales, limited reach, and popularity of other home computers at the time, but perhaps the most well-known clone was the Othello Multivision. Created by Tsukoda Original, not only the Othello Multivision play SG-1000 and SC-3000 games, but it had a handful of its own exclusive titles, one of which is a port of the classic arcade game Bert. The set has 26 achievements worth 239 points. Completing levels 1 through 5 are all what you need to do to beat this game, but mastering this one will require you to unlock achievements like completing level 5 the second time, smushing Sam before he drops any blocks, reaching the score of 100,000, and clearing all 5 levels without losing a life or using a disc. I have also heard that the Othello Multivision port of Q*bert has a problem with unpredictable avalanches of red boulders and stage 5 being way too unfair. Sticking with the Othello Multivision for a bit, our next game is a port of Tecmo's arcade game Guzzler. In fact, there was no other home port of Guzzler outside the Othello Multivision, and it wouldn't be until 2021, where the arcade version was ported to the PS4 and Nintendo Switch as part of Arcade Archives. And yet, despite its obscurity, it still managed to spawn a clone in form of Honoi no Yakata Firehouse for the PC 8801. What you do in this game is you extinguish flames and their mother fires. To do that, you'll need to fill up with water by walking into puddles and spit it out on the fires. But if you fill yourself to the top, you move slower, leaving you vulnerable. As it can hold 3 cascades of water at a time, you'll get lighter each time you spit, but at the same time, your range will be shorter. While the game has 18 achievements worth 125 points, while I was recording it, I thought I needed to complete rounds to beat the game, but it turns out the actual win condition was to get a score of 30,000 points and to earn an extra life. Still, only a real Guzzler can master the set, as achievements include completing round 1 without harming any fire monsters, beating rounds without losing a life, beating rounds 1 through 9 in a single game, and even killing all 3 fire monsters after they have all spawned in, while making sure you don't let any more spawn in. So, what are you waiting for? Give this game a try. As one of the November 1983 releases, next we have a port of a 1982 arcade game, Pop Flamer. Originally developed by Yamato, you control a mouse and your goal is to pop all balloons in stages, while avoiding monsters trying to catch you. But fear not, you can kill enemies by burning them to a crisp with a flamethrower. Be careful not to spew flames all willy-nilly though, as you have limited ammo. When it runs out, you will need to refuel. Much like Guzzler I mentioned earlier, this one never saw any ports outside the SG-1000, and its Arcade Archives release in 2021 for the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch meant it's the first time it got a modern re-release. You know, if we ever get a Yamato Arcade 2 for the Evercade, let's hope this game will be part of a cartridge. This set has 11 achievements worth 110 points, so looking at the list of challenges, it doesn't sound too bad on the surface, as you simply need to beat 2 loops, clear a loop without dying, gaining 10,000 score for an extra life, drinking the power drink, gaining 50,000 points or more, and clearing levels without using your flamethrower, dying or drinking any power drinks. But upon playing it, this has to be one of the worst hitboxes I've ever encountered on an SG-1000 game. Our rodent friend can literally get stuck in every corner and passage, while you need to hit the balloons in an exact frame to pop them. As a result, this problem makes the SG-1000 port more stressful than it needs to be. I mean, seriously, being a mouse with a flamethrower ought to be more fun. Although the trophies are way easier and frankly the same as any other Arcade Archives release, at least the PlayStation 4 version has some sort of achievement support for the way better arcade version. but since we have no set for the arcade version on RetroAchievements, we'll have to make do with the SG-1000 port, unfortunately. Monaco GP was released in December of 1983, and it's a simple racing game as you drive your car while you dodge obstacles and opponents, as well as jumping over bridge gaps. It's simple as that. This set has 11 achievements worth 125 points, and the only requirement to beat the game is to reach the end of the first loop on game difficulty level 1. And given the easiest achievement is for keeping the max speed for 20 seconds, you can tell how hard this set actually is. The mastery will require you to reach 200,000 points, reaching the end of the first loop on all 3 difficulty levels without crashing, and surviving long enough to avoid 5 ambulances. Also released in December of 1983 is Pachinko, and well, it's a pachinko simulator. Like how fruit machine simulators are a common sight on 8-bit micros in Europe, given how easy it is to program one for commercial release or as type-in listings in magazines, pachinko simulators were a dime a dozen in Japan in the early days of gaming. The set has 10 achievements worth 65 points, all of which make for a stupidly easy mastery when using the fast forward feature on RetroAch. Funnily enough, the set seems to have all the badges and achievement names dedicated to Nicolas Cage. I have no idea what he has anything to do with pachinko machines, but I will say this: if he was a fan of those things, he'd be in heaven if he saw Konami's pachinko machines. What an eccentric fellow. Starting off the new year, Sinbad Mystery is a maze game from 1984 where you run around the maze collecting question marks to uncover the map. When it's fully revealed, a magic lamp will appear on the map. Once you get the lamp, it's off to the next stage. You can also place holes and move rocks to block the enemy's path. Just make sure you don't accidentally hide the question mark with a said rock. This set has 9 achievements worth 95 points. You simply need to complete all 7 rounds to beat this one, but the mastery will require you to earn 20,000 points for an extra life and finishing a stage without revealing all of the map. The first of the 4 releases for March of 1984, Borderline is a shoot-'em-up developed by Compile, the same studio behind the Puyo Puyo series. You control a tank and your aim is to destroy enemy fortresses and headquarters across 4 stages per round. Each round starts with the first stage, where it's an auto-scrolling shooter that has you shooting projectiles to clear the way. Stages 2 and 3 require you to destroy enemy fortresses, while stage 4 will have you destroy the headquarters, which also has a turret that fires in one direction at a time. I do find the stage 1 portions of each round to be cumbersome, as the angle thingies tend to show the worst of collision detection on the SG-1000, but the majority of the game itself is kinda like Thunderground on the 2600. This one has 19 achievements worth 167 points, and although the progression achievements go up to stage 4 of round 3, mastering this set will also require you to beat rounds 4 and 5, beat the first 3 rounds without losing a life, and obtaining at least 20,000 and 100,000 points respectively. Our next March 1984 release is Champion Golf, originally developed by a company called Logitech, spelled without an H, to avoid confusion with the Swiss company best known for computer accessories and racing wheels for PC and consoles. Besides Champion Golf, the studio also developed several games for the Nichibutsu Myvision, an obscure Japanese exclusive console which only played digital versions of board games like Reversi, Mahjong, and Hafanuda. Now, I really suck at golf, as I often wind up with more bogeys than pars. Computer golf has to be the absolute worst I've played so far, as there is absolutely no way you can get a par or better on any of the 9 holes without ripping your hair out in frustration. This one has 24 achievements worth 142 points, with getting par on all 9 holes being the requirement for beating the game. Other achievements include making a putt while your caddy is strictly on each of the 4 borders, getting a birdie, eagle, albatross, and a hole-in-one respectively, making it on the green using an SW from the sand, getting a score of at least -5, getting a par or better on all 9 holes during a single game, getting on a green in 2 strokes on holes 2 and 7, and making a putt while your caddy is on any of the 4 corners. Next up, we have Zippy Race, an arcade racing game originally made by R.E.M, the same company behind Mon Patrol and R-Type. You ride on a motorcycle and you avoid cars and hazards as you make your way to locations from Los Angeles all the way to New York, while making sure you have enough fuel for the ride. This one has 12 achievements worth 147 points, and you just need to finish the first loop to beat this game. Mastering this set will require you to jump across water during off-road segments, doing a wheelie, arriving in Las Vegas in 70th ranking or lower, making it to New York with a first place rating, maintaining a speed of 250 km per hour for a minute, and completing second and third loops. Our last March 1984 release is a port of another Yalaco game, Exerion. The original arcade version was developed by Kawadenshi Giken, whose only other game they made, as far as I know, was Naughty Boy. Unlike Yalaco's other game, Pop Flamer, Exerion's home release wasn't exclusive to the SG-1000, as it was also ported to both the MSX and Famicom. And like Pop Flamer, it did see an Arcade Archives release, but this time around it was released on the PlayStation 4 first. More specifically, it came out on a Japanese PlayStation Store in 2014, the rest of the world got it a year later, while the Switch version came out in 2020. 6 years after the PlayStation 4 version's Japanese release. This set has 6 achievements worth 58 points. Another straightforward set, all you need to do to beat this game is to complete 85 scenes in one player mode. The other achievement needed for mastery is to get a score of 500,000k or more. One of the 2 games for April of 1984, Golgo 13 is a scrolling shooter based on a titular manga. Taking on the role of a main character, Duke Togo, your aim is to rescue people trapped inside a train, despite the fact that in the source material is actually an assassin. Each stage has you aiming the crosshair and shoot the train windows, allowing the civilians to escape. But be careful not to shoot the tall cars of a comically long cargo train, as the bullet will bounce back at you. In later stages, you will also have to deal with trucks and helicopters, which you will need to shoot down as well. With 10 achievements worth 134 points, the set goes up to round 14. though you only need to clear 10 rounds to beat this game. Other challenges for the mastery include clearing a round with at least 60 seconds remaining on the timer, clearing a round after destroying at least 25 helicopters, missiles or windows, and clearing the first 10 rounds without losing a life. The other game for April 1984 is Pachinko II. It's essentially the same game as Pachinko, but there are 2 more tables in addition to the updated version of a table from the original. In fact, the original Pachinko was recalled due to a game-breaking bug and released a few months later as Pachinko II. It's strange because for one thing, SEGA didn't make sequels to any of their SG-1000 games in the system's commercial life. Pachinko II was released very close to the original, while said original is one of the rarest, most expensive, and highly sought after SG-1000 games on the second-hand market to this day. Heck, the game was sold for 113,500 yen at a Yahoo Japan auction at some point in 2013. Anyway, the set has 18 achievements worth 175 points, and much like the original, using the fast forward feature on RetroAch is fair game. Although I wouldn't line up your initial shots while the turbo feature is toggled. Just make sure you find a sweet spot before you turn on the turbo and save yourself some time. Next we have Safari Race, a racing game released in July of 1984. In this game, you drive across the safari avoiding animals and obstacles while also keeping a close eye on the fuel tank. If you're running low, then stop by the gas station to refuel. And be careful, if you hit an animal or obstacle, you lose a wheel. If you run out of gas or lose all wheels, it's game over. With 7 achievements worth 90 points, this is as simple as it sounds. Beating the game requires you to clear all 3 sections, while other challenges include beating the game without ever losing a tire, as well as beating each section in under a specific time limit. The Othello Multivision strikes again, this time with a shoot-'em-up from May 1984. Developed by Tsukoda Original themselves, this is heavily influenced by Atari's Star Wars arcade game. As a pilot of what appears to be a spinach green X-Wing, you try to take down Star Destroyer-like ships and TIE-esque fighters during the dogfight segments. To beat each scene, you need to destroy the Space Mountain by completing a trench run. Out of all Othello Multivision games, this one has to be the easiest mastery, as it has 11 achievements worth 60 points. What you need to do to beat this game is to destroy the space, I can't believe it's not the Death Star mountain on 10 scenes, while mastery will also require you to destroy 10 TIE-esque fighters and 10 Star Destroyer-like ships in a row during a single scene, completing a trench run with a single direct hit, destroying 5 squadrons in a single game, and scoring up to 20,000 points. Use the Force, Othello. Luke. Another champion sports game for the SG-1000, we now get in the ring with Champion Boxing, released in October of 1984. Believe it or not, this was programmed and designed by Yu Suzuki, as his first coding project when SEGA first hired him in 1983. Yes, the same Yu Suzuki behind Outrun, Virtua Fighter, Afterburner, and Shenmue. While it was released on the SG-1000, it was also released on arcades and even received an MSX version in Europe a year later. It's a simple boxing game as you have 5 difficulty levels and 3 punch types: straight punch, jab, and an upper punch. Out of all the champion games, this is the only one I actually enjoyed, but I will admit that in later rounds and higher difficulties, things really were getting tense for me. This has 6 achievements worth 33 points, and all you need to do is beating your opponent in all 5 difficulty levels, as well as defeating your opponent in the first round. I'm honestly surprised it wasn't on the 3-point seal of approval hub, given that 117 out of 218 users mastered this set quite easily. And of course, we go to an unbelievably crappy game, which is par for the course with the Champion Sports series. Released in November of 1984, Champion Soccer really takes the cake for being one of the worst SG-1000 games I've ever played, and I already suck at soccer to begin with. Even on the amateur difficulty, it's almost impossible to score a goal or, well, anything. Once again, compare this to real sports soccer on the 2600. I am still bad at soccer regardless of the system, but at least I had a much easier time with that one compared to this disaster. While 8 achievements worth 68 points don't sound too bad, as you simply need to win a match to beat this game, but even then that is a Herculean task with a game this bad. And given that only 2 people mastered it, I can't blame you if you decided to avoid this game like the plague. If you ever played any game in the Sonic the Hedgehog series, you might be familiar with the little birds known as Flickies. If you ask anyone with an expertise in both Sonic and SEGA in general, they'll certainly tell you that this blue jay existed long before the blue blur made its debut. First released in arcades, Flicky was ported to a lot of platforms. While the Mega Drive version from 1990 is certainly the most well known, Flicky saw its first home release on the SG-1000, which released in the same year as the arcade game. In this game, Flicky must collect her chicks, known as Pio-Pios, and lead them back to the safety of their nest, while avoiding hungry cats that can be knocked out with objects like watering cans, hammers, cups, and more. This December 1984 release has 24 achievements worth 196 points, with the requirement for beating this game is to clear round 40, thus beating the main game loop. Alongside the score achievements, which go up to 800,000 points, this is the first set on the video that has missable achievements. Those missables in particular refer to the Pio-Pio catcher rounds, where you must catch all 20 Pio-Pios to get those Chivos. Yet another Othello Multivision game on this video, we have Space Armor, released in December of 1984. Another game by Tsukoda Original themselves, this was a clone of Namco's Xevious, as one button shoots bullets and the other throws bombs on enemies on land. Being that it's an endless shooter, you just need to earn as many points as you can before you lose all your lives. Another game that should be on a 3-point seal of approval hub, but actually isn't, Space Armor has 7 achievements worth 65 points, all but 1 are related to points. In order to beat this one, you need to get 3.5 million points, while for mastery, you will also need to get a point combo of 9 and get to 1 million points without losing a life. And now it's time to bid farewell to the Othello Multivision with its one last game for the SG-1000 DevJam. 007 James Bond was released by Parker Brothers on a lot of 8-bit systems in 1984, including the ColecoVision, Commodore 64, Atari 8-bit computers, as well as the 2600 and 5200. Tsukoda Original did manage to get the license from Parker Brothers to bring this horizontally scrolling shooter to the Othello Multivision for the Japanese audience. You control James Bond in his multi-purpose craft that travels on land and sea. This allows you to jump over or dive under danger and fire at enemies. Each level is loosely based on a different James Bond movie, all with their own objectives. The movies in particular being Diamonds Are Forever, The Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, and For Your Eyes Only. This port has a set with 17 achievements worth 235 points, with the main goal to beat the game is to clear the For Your Eyes Only stage on either level 1 or 2. But if you want this set to be both shaken and stirred, try mastering the set, as it includes clearing the first 3 stages without firing more than a set amount, clearing the 4th stage without firing at all, getting a score of 10,000, 30,000 and 60,000 respectively, clearing the game on level 1 with the 005 rating, and clearing the game on level 2 with the 007 rating. We now head to 1985 with another port of an arcade game, Zaxxon. Zaxxon, the pioneer in games with an isometric perspective, first came out in 1982, and it was ported to plenty of platforms, including the Apple II, MSX, ColecoVision, Intellivision, Atari systems, and more. According to Moby Games, the ColecoVision port in particular was the 5th best rated game on the system. As far as the SG-1000 is concerned, it got a port 3 years after the original made its debut. Only 2 reviews were archived on Moby Games for the SG-1000 version, both of which being retro reviews. The video game critic gave this port a 75%, who stated that while the port is probably guilty of being too easy and repetitive, it's nice to enjoy Zaxxon without straining your wrist. SEGA does, on the other hand, gave the port a D+, stating that while the port is more enjoyable than the original, it's ultimately shallow, as the lack of special effects or any significant challenge led to the port being yet another example of how limited the SG-1000 actually was. The set for the port has 8 achievements worth 75 points, which is admittedly less than a ColecoVision port whose set is worth 165 points. Other than clearing all 5 rounds, the mastery requires you to clear the first stage without losing a life or letting the fuel warning sound go off, scoring 20,000 points to earn an extra life, and defeating Zaxxon before it launches its missile. Oh good grief, and I thought the soccer one was tough. Champion Pro Wrestling is the next game in the Champion Sports series, released in March of 1985. Wrestling is another type of sport I have no experience with, so even though it's more simplistic than many other games in the genre since then, it's still a pain in the neck for me. This set has 9 achievements worth 72 points, with the win condition requiring you to beat all 5 opponents. Other achievements for the mastery include beating an opponent with only chops and kicks, beating an opponent without being pinned once or pinning the opponent more than once, scoring 100,000 points, and beating an opponent with at least 4 minutes and 20 seconds left on the timer. April 1985 brings us another arcade port, this time being GP World. GP World was originally a laserdisc arcade game where you dodge cars while the video footage of the chosen track plays. The hardware limitations of the SG-1000 meant a direct port will be impossible to pull off, so what we have here is practically a demake of GP World. This demake has 25 achievements worth 240 points, with the main goal for beating this game is to qualify on each course, starting with Canada all the way to Italy. While the set also has achievements for setting a new record in every course on level 3, qualifying on a hidden course, finishing any course with the average speed above 290 km per hour, and completing a GP without completely wrecking your car, there's also an achievement for a feature that's not found in the original Laserdisc arcade version: a course editor. Its own achievement simply requires you to qualify on an edited course in Japan. The hardest achievement is without a doubt the One More achievement, as it asks you to complete the GP on level 4. For our next game, this one is pretty funny, as the SG-1000 got 2 different Othello games in its commercial life, one by SEGA themselves and one by Tsukoda Original for the Othello Multivision. While Othello Multivision had its own version built in with a system, SEGA sold theirs as a standalone title in July of 1985. And regardless if you call it Othello or Reversi, the rules remain the same. You place black or white pieces on the board to surround your opponent's pieces and turn them to your color. The goal is to have more pieces showing your color than your opponent's at the end of a game. This one has 16 achievements worth 66 points, and you simply need to beat the opponent on any difficulty level as either black or white to beat this game, as long as you don't use hints or undo the turn with the cancel option. To master it, not only you need to win on all 5 difficulty levels with both black and white tiles, you'll also need to get 2 turns in a row, getting 8 points or more in one turn, placing a piece of your color in each corner, as well as getting a draw. And the ports just keep on coming, as Bank Panic, released in September of 1985, is next on the video. First released in arcades in 1984, Bank Panic is a gallery shooter developed by Sanritsu Denki, where you must shoot down bandits while letting citizens give you money bags for deposit. If you have money bags on all counters, you move on to the next round. But be careful, partner, if the bandit shoots you or if you shoot a citizen by mistake, you will lose a life. The SG-1000 port has 13 achievements worth 95 points. Clearing rounds 1 to 10 should be enough to get the job done, but a real deputy will go the extra mile to master the set. Other challenges include finishing rounds 1 through 5 without losing a life, earning 70,000 and 200,000 points respectively, finishing a round with no fair average bonus, with 10 seconds or less left on the counter, and while collecting at least 24 bags respectively. October 1985 brings us an SG-1000 port of a Broderbund software game, Drol. Developed by Benny Ike Bang Nigo, it was originally released for the Apple II, Commodore 64, and Atari 8-bit computers in 1983. You play as a cute robot that can fly and shoot, as your aim in Drol is to rescue children who are wandering around each level while shooting and avoiding enemies, from demons and snakes to hopping aliens which happen to have a beer belly. The set has 15 achievements worth 60 points, with the main target for beating the game is to complete 5 rounds. Other challenges include completing mazes 1 and 2 without popping Mary's balloon and John's helicopter respectively, scoring 10,000 and 25,000 points respectively, completing 2 levels in a row without dying, killing a demon and picking up a roast turkey. Funny thing about the game was that it was originally planned to be called Drol, until Broderbond suggested the name should be changed to Drol, despite the fact that Drol is a Dutch word for excrement. For November of 1985, we now have Rock and Bolt. Published by Activision and developed by Action Graphics, it was originally released on the Commodore 64 in February of that year. Besides the SG-1000, Rock and Bolt was also ported to the ColecoVision and MSX, with distribution being handled by Telegames and Pony Canyon respectively. You take control of Louis, a construction worker who must lock down the constantly moving girders and get back to where you started the level. There are 2 types of levels, one where it's just about locking down the girders, and the other's a blueprint puzzle mode, where you must put them in a specific location. Rock and Bolt is a special treat, as the SG-1000 port has not 1 but 2 separate sets. The main set contains 18 achievements worth 130 points, and in order to beat this one, you need to complete 24 floors on any setting. Mastering this one will require you to complete 24 floors on the Time 2 difficulty and without losing a life, completing blueprint puzzles of each type without removing a bolt or bolting in the wrong position, completing floors 1 through 8 on a timed difficulty while tightening at least 164 bolts, earning at least $10,000, and earning an extra life by stepping on 5 blinking bolts in the same run. And if you found that mastery to be a piece of cake, then wait until you try the Overtime Overload subset, where you have to uncover all 6 picture pieces by completing all 121 rounds in the same run, with the subset being worth a whopping 250 points. Another November 1985 release for the SG-1000 is a port of Elevator Action, originally developed by Taito Corporation. My first experience with Elevator Action was when I played it on the Taito edition of the Hyper Megatech Super Pocket, a handheld console from Blaze Entertainment, who made Hyper Megatech to be a sister brand of their popular Evercade line. When I eventually played the SG-1000 port, I immediately knew something was off when I noticed the enemies shoot you way faster than on the original arcade version, and I played that version on the easy mode setting. Seriously, I got a game over in less than 30 seconds, and it happened way too many times, making this port really unfair, as it doesn't give you a chance to react, let alone allowing the control input to catch up in time. While the NES port is still the most brutal in terms of difficulty, the SG-1000 port is certainly a close second. With 16 achievements worth 180 points, you only have 4 rounds to worry about in order to beat this one. If you're more of a masochistic type, then try mastering this set, as you also need to earn 50,000, 30,000 without dying once, as well as completing rounds without shooting, ducking, jumping, or going up an elevator. Another SG-1000 port by Compile, Championship Lode Runner, is a sequel to the original Lode Runner, which was also ported to this console. While the premise of collecting treasure while avoiding enemies and digging holes to trap them is still there, the levels are a lot harder than the before. So hard in fact, I couldn't even solve the first level, despite the fact that other RA users who played the set had beaten it pretty easily. I guess I just wasn't prepared for it. The set has 57 achievements worth 320 points, and in order to beat this one, you have to clear all 51 levels on speed 3 or faster. The rest of the set involves getting a high score all the way to 100k, as well as clearing any 10 levels in a row without losing a life. Now here's a game that a lot of Atarians will recognize. While H.E.R.O was one of Activision's well-known Atari 2600 games, and one of the most well-known third-party 2600 games as a whole, Activision ported this classic game to a lot of platforms, which includes the SG-1000 version, released exclusively in Japan in December of 1985. The SG-1000 port has 26 achievements worth 275 points, and to beat this one, you just need to clear all 20 acts. Other achievements are sorted by two types: Deathless achievements, where you need to clear all 20 acts in one session without losing a life, and Lights Out achievements, where you need to finish acts 4 through 20 with all lights turned off. Next December 1985 release is Champion Ice Hockey, and at this point I am getting tired of this series, despite the fact that there are 2 more games to cover in a Champion Sports series. All I can say is that Activision's Ice Hockey on the 2600 is way better than this. Seriously, the skating in this game is just Most of the time, you feel like Wile E. Coyote trying to catch the Roadrunner on ice skates during a stormy winter, and the game can't handle all the players on the ice, so when you do get a breakaway, you speed down the ice like you are sliding on a banana peel. And not to mention it has more flickering than on the 2600, and that system was known for the flickering in some games. This set has 11 achievements worth 102 points, and much like Champion Soccer, you just need to win a game on any difficulty. But good luck actually trying to win any match in this game, let alone master the entire set. Our next December 1985 game is Hang On 2. Despite the name, this SG-1000 exclusive game is actually a port of the original arcade Hang On. I have no idea why it was named like this, but there's no denying that it did a pretty decent job of bringing the arcade hit to Sega's oldest console. This one has 20 achievements worth 328 points, and one course should be enough for you to beat this game. But a mastery will certainly require you to clear 8 courses on any level, clear course 1 on level 3, as well as achievements for clearing course 1 without crashing and with 30 seconds or more on a clock respectively. To wrap up the holiday season for 1985, we now get to another port of a Tecmo arcade game. This time around, we have Bomb Jack, which was often seen as one of the arcade games whose conversions were very popular on home computers in Europe. In Bomb Jack, you have to collect all bombs on each stage while avoiding enemies. Simple, but addicting as heck. The SG-1000 version has 24 achievements worth 220 points, with the progression achievements requiring you to beat 10 rounds per achievement without getting a game over. There are 50 rounds in case you're wondering. Other challenges include beating 10 stages per achievement within a time limit and while collecting 20 or more firebombs on each round, having 5 extra lives at once, and beating all 50 rounds from start to finish without getting a game over. Puyo Puyo developer Compile strikes again, this time with a port of a game originally developed by Pony Canyon. Released in February of 1986, Your aim in Seesaw is to eliminate all enemies by using seesaws. You can crush them when they are under a seesaw, or you can launch them high until they hit the roof of a platform. And don't forget the balloon enemies, as by looking directly at them will cause them to fly away. This set has 41 achievements worth 441 points. While Star Force is still the biggest SG-1000 set overall, with 135 achievements worth 1,800 points in total, Seesaw has the honor of being the biggest set to come out of the SG-1000 DevJam, with it being worth more points for mastery than Hang On 2 and Championship Lode Runner. Beating this one will require you to complete all 99 rounds, with each achievement covering 5 stages each. In order to master it, you will need to do that again, but without running out of time or getting a game over. There is also an achievement for making your own custom level and then completing it. Almost done with the Champion Sports series, and for this April 1986 release is Champion Kendou. The only knowledge I have of this traditional Japanese sport is through a minigame in Ape Academy 2. So after playing this game, it somewhat reminds me of fencing, but instead of poking the opponent with a pointy metal sword-like stick thingy, you poke the opponent with a larger wooden stick. It's not too bad, though it is pretty tricky, even though I was playing with teams, so my attempt at getting anywhere in this game went from Kendou to oh no. This button mashing exercise regime has 14 achievements worth 180 points. In order to beat this one, you need to beat all 6 levels on both singles and teams. The other 2 achievements task you with defeating all 5 members of a team without losing a member of your own, and defeating an opponent while your energy is critical. For our next game, we jump back into tank action with Super Tank, released in July of 1986. This one doesn't seem to have that much information on Moby games, or anywhere else for that matter, other than it's an overhead action game where you shoot down everything in your path. This rather obscure SG-1000 game has 17 achievements worth 150 points. While you can beat this one by clearing the first loop after you finish level 7, other challenges include completing levels 1 through 7 without losing a life, clearing the second loop, and clearing the main part of the first 2 levels without firing a single shot. Released in September of 1986, we now get to the final game in the Champion Sports series with Champion Billiards. This one is yet another compile developed game, but it apparently plays a lot like Lunar Pool on the NES. In fact, according to SEGAretro.org, it's actually the first game in Compile's Lunar Pool series. What you do in this level-based physics game is to use the cue ball that sinks other balls. This one has 11 sets worth 95 points. Beating this one requires you to complete all 50 rounds, with 5 rounds per achievement. The only other achievement involves getting extra balls by cracking a yellow ball, which results in having a yellow Flicky Bert come out of it. Aww. And now we come to our final officially licensed game from the SG-1000 DevJam, as well as the final one chronologically, with Bulletproof Software's dungeon crawler, the Black Onyx. The SG-1000 version came out in March of 1987, which makes it a late release. In fact, the SG-1000 version came out 3 years after it made its debut on the PC-88, PC-98, and the Sharp X1. The only review that I can find on Moby Games comes from Sebastian Sponsel when he wrote a retro review on SEGA-16.com in November of 2020. He gave the SG-1000 version a 3 out of 10, who had this to say at the end. The Black Onyx is a very bare-bones, very old-school dungeon crawler with emphasis on old. While it's neat to see that the characters already have little animations going on and visibly display what equipment they carry, which wasn't a given for RPGs at the time, this doesn't help to mask the fact that there is not much to the game. The SG-1000 certainly was no graphical powerhouse, but even with that in mind, the visuals are displeasing and monotonous. The primary color scheme for the dungeon doesn't serve to create an appropriate atmosphere, least of all for a town supposedly shrouded in an everlasting night. And gameplay wise, the Black Onyx doesn't have much to offer. It may be interesting for its place in the history of Japanese RPGs, and during its original release, it might have awed a gaming populace that up until that point had no idea what a role-playing game was supposed to be. From a modern perspective, however, it feels more like a pilot study of what an RPG could theoretically be than a proper, full-fledged game in that genre. By the time this title was ported to the SG-1000, other console platforms could already offer far superior games in every regard, even in the JRPG subgenre. Standing on its own and viewed through a lens of gaming history, it remains in an awkward place, between a stripped-down Western wizardry knockoff on one side and a clunky Eastern proto-JRPG on the other. Anyway, there are 14 achievements worth 143 points. Obtaining the Black Onyx is what you need to do in order to beat this game, but other achievements include obtaining and equipping a magic cloak, having a fighter reach level 5, and defeating specific enemies, including the Kraken, whose achievement for killing it is worth 25 points. Now that we're done with the official releases, I believe it's the right time for me to mention that between 1986 and 1987, there were several unlicensed games that were sold exclusively in Taiwan. All of those unlicensed games were ports of MSX ports of arcade games. Heck, my final set I developed before I retired from the set development was an unlicensed port of an MSX conversion of Rally X. Dashi releases in particular required the use of their own RAM adapter, which makes it unplayable on some emulators. As part of the SG-1000 DevJam, we got sets for 5 unlicensed ports. First we have Magical Tree, which was originally released exclusively for the MSX by Konami in 1984. Unofficially ported to the SG-1000 by Ironics, you play as a little Indian who must climb the tree all the way to the top while avoiding animals and collecting fruits and other special items. This set has 12 achievements worth 80 points. You can beat the game by clearing all 9 stages, but mastering it will involve scoring 100,000 points, having 5 lives, and clearing the second section, which is climbing up from 55 to 100 meters without jumping more than 6 times. Another release from Ironics, but this time it had a rather funny story. Konami was originally going to release an official port of Yie Ar Kung Fu, but the plans were scrapped due to the SG-1000's popularity declining by 1985. And yet, that hadn't stopped Ironics from making an unlicensed port of the MSX version sometime in 1986. This set has 13 achievements worth 105 points, whose mastery will involve getting a perfect on each stage, hitting all 20 items in any bonus stage, and scoring over 30,000 and 50,000 points respectively. Yet another Konami title unofficially brought to the SG-1000, but this time done by a different company, Jumbo. Released on the SG-1000 in 1987, this game is the first on this video to require the -G RAM adapter, so it won't run on some emulators. It's still Twinbee at the end of the day, so there's that. The SG-1000 version has 19 achievements worth 220 points. Mastering this one will require you to clear 2 loops, obtaining power-ups and reaching 1 million points. It's also thoughtful that there is an achievement that unlocks if you booted the game with the correct core or emulator, complete with an image of an emperor penguin. Next we have a Dachi release, as they brought the MSX version of Hudson Soft's Star Soldier to the SG-1000 in 1987. It also requires the RAM adapter, so now it's a perfect time for me to provide some context behind it. Adapters like these were common in Taiwan, as this was due to the weak copyright laws in regards to video games. This allowed the adapters to be sold in the 80s and early 90s in Asian countries such as these. And whether SEGA or the developers of the MSX games approved any of these releases or the adapters remains a mystery. There are 22 achievements to unlock, all worth 195 points in total. Alongside completing all 16 stages, you'll also need to complete all stages without the Star Brain or Big Star Brain escaping, destroying a 3rd, 5th and 6th Zagu on a stage for point bonuses, destroying Lazado, and fully upgrading your ship. And for our last unlicensed port of an MSX game for the DevJam, we have Magical Kid Wiz. Originally released in arcades by Seibu Kaihatsu, it was ported by Sony. Yes, that Sony. Long before the PlayStation and before Sony ImageSoft, there was a time when Sony was one of the companies that had the license to make their own MSX models. Sony was also able to publish several games to the MSX, with some of the games being released on cassette for the European MSX owners. One of those Sony published MSX games is a port of Wiz. What's even crazier was that Onyx managed to take this Sony published port to the SG-1000 in 1987. The set has 10 achievements worth 60 points. One half of a set are progression achievements, while the other half has you holding at least one of each item at the same time, yes, even a key and a gem, using a speed up potion and a flame shield at the same time, having a familiar sit on your head while you're on fire, collecting 3 staffs in a single game, and having 3 gems in your inventory. Licensed and unlicensed games complete, so now it's time to wrap it up with 10 homebrew games that got a set for the SG-1000 DevJam, starting with an easy mastery. Released on 24th of October in 2016, H7N9 was a maze game developed by Paulo Silva, also known as Nitro Furano. Taking control of a poorly drawn hen, you move around the glitch-looking maze trying to find the keys and eggs. This is a very easy set to master, as all 6 achievements simply involve glitching out in rooms with each of the 3 keys and eggs. I actually mastered the set while recording this gameplay footage, so I can confirm that it can be beaten in under 10 minutes. Next we have the first of a trifecta of SG-1000 games created by the Mahjong twins. First up is Super Uwol, which was released on the SG-1000 on November 19th in 2016. It's a platformer where you collect coins in each room of a mansion, but be careful not to take too long or Fanti will be chasing you. This set has 58 achievements worth 139 points, with an achievement available for every single level except for level 9-2, as it cannot be completed for some reason. Other achievements include beating the game without taking damage, beating the game with at least 300 coins, and collecting 8 coins while being chased by Fanti without being harmed. Another game from the Mahjong twins, Paco and Puri, landed on the SG-1000 on March 16, 2020. This is actually a reworked and expanded version of their NES game Paco from 2015, which itself is a conversion of their ZX Spectrum game that was only available as part of their Cover Tape 2 compilation from 2013. In the SG-1000 version, not only you get to choose to play as the new character, Puri, but also as an additional mission. The main goal remains the same: traverse through the ship to find all 20 crystals that are hidden in various rooms. This expanded version has 8 achievements worth 40 points, as not only you have achievements for completing all 3 missions, but also beating a mission with both Paco and Puri, having more than 10 health, as well as finishing the secret stage, both normally and with 20 health. Our third game from the Mahjong twins is Cheril Peril's Classic, which arrived on the SG-1000 on March 25, 2020, 9 days after they released Paco and Puri. In this 2D platformer, you must clear each stage by killing all monsters. In easy mode, you can kill the monsters by simply jumping on them. In Resonators mode, you need to activate the Resonator first to temporarily freeze them before you can jump on them. This set has 11 achievements worth 55 points, and not only you need to clear all 4 stages on both modes, but also carry 2 keys and 9 hearts at one time, as well as getting 3 kills in one hit of a Resonator. Since we didn't get Tetris in neither official or unofficial form during the SG-1000's commercial life, Polycat was a perfect alternative for this often neglected console. Developed by Helmha and made available for download through SMS Power on September 28th of 2020, I actually uploaded a gameplay video of it during the early days of the Full Scene Arcade, so this was an opportunity to revisit this old relic from the channel's past uploads. The set has 20 achievements worth 289 points, with the challenges including clearing more than 40 lines within the time limit, getting more than 7,000 points in under 2 minutes, as well as the usual score and line clear achievements. This is also the biggest homebrew set to come out from both the SG DevJam as well as the SG-1000 as a whole. Another homebrew game that you can get on SMS Power, we have Earth Attack, released on January 16th of 2021. Developed by Pintus Giuseppe Ettore, aka the Geps of Phase 101, it's a simple Space Invaders clone, albeit with no sound or music whatsoever. According to the title screen, Earth Attack was coded for the Space Invaders challenge on Retro Programmers Inside. This one has 15 achievements worth 125 points, which includes beating stages, getting a high score up to 80,000, getting kills without losing a life, and even getting 15 kills without moving from your starting position or losing a life. If you want to play a game infuriating enough to smash your keyboard, throw the controller across the room, bend the phone in half and or karate chop your monitor, then look no further than Forester, a 2D platformer released on January 27th, 2022. Developed by Lucas Siudim, your goal is to collect all coins in a level without touching spikes, enemies and other hazards, while also timing your double jump to make sure you don't lose a life and start the level all over again. And yeah, it's a very poorly designed game, especially since double jumping on the SG-1000 is a terrible idea, which makes you die way too easily. It would have been way more tolerable if it was on the Amstrad CPC or the ZX Spectrum, but on the SG-1000? Good gravy! This one has 9 achievements worth 69 points, but given what I just said about this game, would mastering this set be worth all the pain, torture and temper tantrums you'd have to endure? I don't. Next we have one of the 2 homebrew games developed by Under 4 MHz, who is known for making puzzle games for a lot of 8-bit systems, including the Master System, Game Gear, Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, ColecoVision, and of course the SG-1000. One of the games is Mahjong Solitaire, which, unlike the Mahjong game we saw earlier in the video, this is a puzzle game where you must clear the boards by matching pile pairs. Released for the SG-1000 on June 1st of 2023, this is a kind of Mahjong you see in games like Shanghai or those Mahjong games you see on Steam and mobile devices today, like Microsoft Mahjong or those made by 8th Floor. This is another simple set, as it has 6 achievements worth 35 points. All you need to do is to match a total of 500 tiles in one session and clearing the board 5 times. Another easy mastery for ya. The other game by Under 4 MHz, whose achievement set came out for the SG-1000 DevJam, is Pegged. Brought to the SG-1000 just 8 days after Mahjong Solitaire, this is the adaptation of a classic peg solitaire game. In order to solve the puzzles, you need to jump the pegs over each other in order to remove them until one peg remains. Both this and Mahjong Solitaire are freely available on both SMS Power and itch.io, so feel free to give both of them a try. As for the set, we have 23 achievements worth 180 points, as not only you need to complete 115 levels, but also complete levels without running out of moves or resetting the pegs. Our final game for the SG-1000 DevJam brings us to a homebrew developer from Japan. The developer in question is Inofuto. Much like Under 4 MHz, Inofuto often ports their games to many 8-bit platforms. However, Inofuto games go far beyond the systems Under 4 MHz can support, as their games also got brought over to the likes of PC-88, Apple II, Commodore 16/+4, the VIC-20, ZX81, BBC Micro, Atari Lynx, WonderSwan, PC Engine, and even the obscure Watara Supervision and Megaduck handhelds. One of those games was Hopman, a 2D platformer whose SG-1000 version came out on August 6th of 2023. In Hopman, your goal is to reach the end of each stage while collecting flags for bonus points and avoiding spikes and cat-like ghosts. The SG-1000 version has 26 achievements, 9 of which are missables, worth 135 points. Mastering this version will involve not only beating 2 loops, but also collecting all flags on each of the first 8 levels, finishing each said level within a time limit, and completing the first loop without losing a life. If you can't get enough of Hopman, don't forget to check out the sets for the PC-88 and Megaduck versions. Hop to it, my friend. Phew, that was a lot of work. And I'm only just getting started with the DevJam videos. Next time, I'll be looking at the sets made for the Saturn DevJam. But in the meantime, what do you think of the games and their sets from the SG-1000 DevJam? Do you have any particular favorites? And what other interesting stories you want to share regarding Sega's first home console? If you have any answers to any of these questions or anything else, feel free to post a comment below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on the Full Scene Arcade. I also heard that the Othello Multivision port of Bert has a problem with unpredictable avalanches, blah 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 blah.